Hello and welcome. My name is David Villar, and I am a professor of pharmacology and toxicology at the School of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Antioquia, which is located at the heartland of Colombia. And I'm going to share with you a topic that, as you can read on that slide, it deals with the environmental and community impacts of gold mining in Colombia. Many of you are probably not aware that Colombia right now, on a per capita basis, is the country which is releasing more mercury into the atmosphere and waterways. And most of that mercury is being used in the process of gold mining. Before we start blaming the miners for using mercury, I think it would be wise to ask what is the driving force why miners are using mercury in the first place. And we'll probably find that there is a lot of pressure from first world countries that are shipping mercury at a very cheap price to undeveloped countries, including Colombia, in order to use it in the process of gold extraction, and that gold doesn't end up in the country, and it's used as a currency trade, as you probably all know. Many banks use it as a reserve asset, and either that or it's being used as jewelry for those people that can afford it. Okay, let me move on to the next slide. Here we have there are two different types of gold exploration, and as you can read on this slide, we should differentiate between industrial gold mining and artisanal gold mining. The second one is the one that uses mercury for gold extraction, and many times is associated with just family-run businesses. It's either medium or small-scale operations, and it would be very easy to vilify people for using mercury, but I think it would be wise to put in perspective the scale of the impact that both of these two types of exploration have on social, economic, even on an environmental basis. And we'll find that industrial mining has a lot more impact as far as devastation goes than artisanal mining. And probably a lot of people are think that industrial, because they use huge, it's done on a large scale. They probably think that they use clean technology, and therefore they're not really polluting, and that's not quite the truth, as I'll show in a few minutes. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the history of industrial mining in Colombia. Here we have a picture on the left side of the slide of former President Álvaro Uribe. And on his inauguration speech, he stated that Colombia was ready to be a major mining country. And on the right side of that picture, you have a chart which represents the revenues in US $1 million. And if we were to start on the year 2002, that's when he took office, and move on, we would see that in just a matter of 5 years, there was an almost fourfold increase in revenues from industrial mining. So basically, his policies, we can say, that have favored large industrial mining in the country. And that's the latest figures are on this other slide. And if we were to start from the very top, going down, the third one comes to the production of gold. And you'll see that there are three circles here, and the last one, the gray circle, represents the expectations of of as far as on the revenue that is going to come from gold exploration for this year 2012. So basically you can tell that just about every mining activity is on the rise, and they're largely exceeding those of the previous 2 years, as you can see on this just a sketch. Okay, these are a list of all the companies that have settled down in Colombia ever since Uribe's took office, and I'm just going to illustrate two examples. There are too many of them, so I kind of chose two of them. One, they are two mining companies, gold mining companies. One is a South African, and it's underlined here with the yellow line. Its name is Anglo Gold. And the second one is a Canadian company. It's called Colombian Goldfields. And I would like to pose the question of how much is local people reaping benefits from the exploitation of their land. And I came across an interesting term in Wikipedia, and you can read it there on that slide on the blue box. It reads, the so-called resource curse, also known as the paradox of the plenty, refers to the paradox that countries with an abundance of natural but non-renewable resources, minerals and fuel, are the poorest in the world. Now you may all ask, well, how could this be possible, right? Well, I'm going to give you my personal opinion, which may not be necessarily true, but nonetheless, here it goes. And this is that one slide you probably don't want to show after lunch, but honestly, I didn't know how to break it down, so I'm gonna, if you bear with me, I'm just gonna go one step at a time and try to explain just a recollection of thoughts that I've put together from reading different sources, and it doesn't necessarily apply to every company and situation, so I don't really want to blame all companies alike for behaving badly, if you want to if you really want to blame them. But anyway, how do we see many of these multinational companies operating in undeveloped countries, and in this case Colombia? And I came with 5 different points. The first one, the lawyers of these mining corporations may write the mining codes for the governments, and it's that, if we were to say that in plain language, many times there are no mining codes before these companies come in. So now there is, when once they settle down, there is going to be the distinction between what's legal and illegal mining is going to be much more clear cut, if you like to put a name on it. And as you can imagine, most of the times artisanal miners get the worst part of the pie here. And second point, the government usually favors foreign investment, and the concession rights are not linked to the community. Third point that you can read on this slide, these multinational corporations, they get all the working licenses from the government that usually take side with the company, expropriating land deemed in the national interest, and artisanal miners have to sell or lose their rights to the big company. Now that's this third point is really a very sad situation for many of native people from Colombia and other undeveloped countries. Many times they're pushed out of their homeland. They don't really have a choice to stay or leave, and it's in many situations it's even a matter of life and death. So they 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 have to either get out of their land or even risk their lives. And another point, number 4, down here, a lot of companies, they will launch false campaigns through the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. In other words, they get a lot of financial support from the World Bank, and with the false pretense that they might even bring a lot of prosperity to a country, to an area. And as I'll show, unfortunately that's not the case in most situations. And finally, they operate in a very permissive regulatory environment. The laws and the regulations are not strict and are not enforced to protect the environment from pollution problems. And I'm not sure to what extent this might be true, but just about when you live in these countries, you can see that many inspectors, even the police, they get paid a very miserable salary, and therefore they're very easily bribed many times. So it's even if they're qualified to start with, sometimes they'll allow a lot of things that should not be permissible. In this case, we're talking about the protection of and the compliance of regulations for these companies. Okay, I think I have set the stage to present our two winners or cases of industrial gold mining. And the first one is taking place in a natural forest reserve. It hasn't been exploited yet, and the second one is, as you can read on that slide, is the oldest mining mountain in Colombia, in Marmato, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about both. The first one, as I said, is the project is called La Colosa, and as its name indicates, it's going to be a colossal mine. The company, it's Anglo Gold Ashanti, and the exploration permits were granted to Anglo Gold in 2009. And at the time, the Minister of the Environment, Carlos Costa, he declared, and I quote in English, the challenge is to make sure that the country can exploit its natural resources in a sustainable and responsible way. So here you have a picture of a poster that they put up on the area where the mine is going to be located, and it's hard to tell because these are very small font words, but on the upper right of that poster you have the name of the company pointed with this red arrow, and on the bottom we have a statement in Spanish that you can read at the very bottom of the slide. It reads, "The water is the foundation of life. Preserve and protect your resources." And as you can see, this is a pretty neat poster of what a waterfall that seems to be surrounded by what looks like a pristine environment. And the other thing I wanted to highlight on this slide is this environmental magazine, which is probably one of the main ones in Colombia, and it's called 14. And guess what? This environmental magazine is entirely financed by Anglo Gold, the mining company. And here they put up a picture of all the candidates for the last general election that took place in Colombia. And out of those 6, President Santos was elected to replace Uribe's. and basically his policies have just have been the same towards favoring industrial mining. Okay, these are a couple of sites of the exploration sites that were taken in 2009, and another inspiring sentence that the Minister of the Environment stated at that time was, and I translate into English: if the results of the exploration determine that it's viable to move into the exploitation phase, we should initiate the final transactions for exploiting the forest reserve and grant environmental license. Now, there is a very implicit message on that statement, and it might not be obvious, but to me, I read that sentence and I think that the final decision to go ahead and grant permission to exploit the area is going to be determined on somebody's office, and there is not going to be probably an independent study by a scientific qualified people that don't have any stakes on the operation, and that are going to assess the impact of the mining in the area. So that's now that was okay. That was 2009, and so it's 4 years. It's been 4 years now. So the exploration phase is now completed, and they determined that gold is superficial in an area of 1,250 acres, and it's mostly forest land, and it needs to be an open pit mine because it's close to the ground. And for those of you that are not familiar with the steps of an open pit mine, I'm going to walk you through all of those. The first one, they'll have to bring in heavy machinery and bulldoze all the area, as you can see on this slide. Second, they'll have to use dynamite to basically blow the mountain apart, and there are about 5 mountains that will be involved in Cajamarca. After dynamiting all the rocks, they'll have to load all the ore or huge rocks onto trucks, and they'll be taken to mills for grinding. And here you have a couple of pictures of that step. And finally, they'll have to build these huge plastic ponds for leaching the gold out of the slurry using cyanide and tons of water. And here you have another example of one of those leaching ponds. So here is a picture of the area that is supposed to be intervened, and I cannot give you a full guarantee that this is exactly whether the area that is going to be exploited, but talking from a couple of people, they say that it looks pretty much alike to this one in this picture. Okay, so what are we going to have for leftovers once the company gets underway and finishes exploiting the area? And as you can see on this slide, that looks pretty much like a total desert. And this is the world's biggest open pit gold mine of Yanacocha in Peru. And I'm not sure if you can pinpoint, but these small dots here at the very far end of this canyon are those huge trucks that they load all the rock and go back and forth to the mill and the mountain. And unfortunately, with this mine in Colombia, Cajamarca, the government is proudly announcing that it's going to be the third largest gold mine in the world. So this is another picture. No, excuse me. I thought I would look for some records on this company that was granted permission to go ahead and exploit Cajamarca, and I look up a few records on Wikipedia, and as you can see, there are three groups. The first one is Human Rights Watch. They have blamed them for financing local warlords and paramilitary groups causing human atrocities in 2005 in the Republic of Congo. Another group, British Charity War on Want, they have accused them of profiting from the abuse of people in developing countries. And a financial magazine, Forbes magazine, they have accused them of paying to murder trade union and community leaders opposing the company's activities in various regions of Colombia. As you can imagine, those are allegations that are pretty difficult to prove, particularly in third world countries that you can easily get away with many things and don't really be caught by justice if there is justice, if there is a good justice system in place to start with. I'm not sure if you might be familiar with this event. It's called the World Economic Forum, and basically what it is every year the world most famous people gather in this one location in Switzerland, in Davos, and they have an official slogan that you can read here, and it says that they're committed to improving the state of the world. Now, why do I bring this up? The reason is because there is a parallel event that is also taking place in kind of in the shadows of the World Economic Forum, but is organized by non-profitable groups and many, if you like, associations of small miners that have been somehow affected by the big companies. Greenpeace is another of the groups organizing, and basically what they do is, as you can read on the left side here, they vote for the worst company of the year, and they call that award the Public Eye Award. And if you want to read it down here on the left, it says that the Public Eye Awards are a critical counterpoint to the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. And guess what? Last year's Oscar was awarded to the South African mining giant AngloGold Ashanti. It was for environmental and social irresponsibility on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. If there is one thing I like about globalization, is that news travel fast, and even in undeveloped countries and Colombia, it's people are very better informed of what's happening around the world, and this particular project made a lot of noise within Colombia. And as you can see on this slide, this is a public protest against exploiting the natural reserve of Cajamarca, and it took place in July of last year. And as you can see on this picture, you have all the people parading here with their banners opposing the government and the company activities. And on the right, you have another picture, one that was taken of Cajamarca, the area that I showed before, from a different angle, those beautiful mountains full of trees, and somebody drew that same mountain as it will look like once the company starts basically exploiting the area. And there is another interesting. This is another interesting banner that is blaming the University of Caldas for taking a contract with Anglo Gold as Hanty, and that is shown in this other picture. Anglo Gold as Hanty hires the University of Caldas, which is by the way, is one of the big public universities in Colombia that has a lot of credibility, and they hire this company for over $1 million in 2011. And here we have a kind of a copy of that contract between the two parties. And I'm not sure exactly what the company will tell the university to put on that report of the impact that the mining will have in the area, but I can imagine that they'll probably have an inventory of trees and different plants that are out there on those mountains. They'll probably have a recollection of all the wildlife creatures that are living there: lizards, birds, snakes, monkeys. But as you can imagine, that'll be a pretty neat report. Ended up on some politician's hand in central Bogota that will look at that and will say, "Wow, this is very interesting." But to me, it's when I look at the how much revenue that company is going to provide, the government, and how much money I'm gonna get from this contract with the company, I don't see a point of trying not to grant permission for going ahead and proceed with the project. So I think it's a pointless contract to start with, if not a shameful contract by that university. Okay, apart from the desert that I showed before, there is another leftovers that will be left behind, and you can see those in this slide, and it's called tailing ponds. And I brought up this example in Bonanza in Nicaragua, and as you can see, there's huge ponds, and basically this is just a dead body of water. You can see some cyanide barrels that were left to float there, and basically that's just a cocktail of acid water, heavy metals that were released from crushing the rocks, cyanide, and as you can imagine, that's a pretty harsh environment and toxic for any creatures approaching that pond. Now, why I brought this example because there is a very elegant and beautiful report that you can look at in internet, and it's called The Legacy of Greenstone Resources in Nicaragua, and it was put together by a group opposing mining, as you can imagine. It's called Mining Watch Canada, and they're based in Ottawa, Ontario. And basically what these people did is they went out there to the area in Nicaragua to document what the company left behind once they packed and leave. And basically what they found was a huge trail of misery. And you can see here this little girl that seems to be playing with some bowl of water here, and those cyanide barrels are being used as fences in the houses or as public trash cans for the village. Now I wanted to kind of put something up from that neat report, and I think the conclusion kind of summarizes in a nutshell everything on that. It's a pretty long report, but anyway, they concluded that we need urgent action to have the Canadian government support legislation that imposes standards for mining companies operating abroad, and they should respond to community needs, not just demands for international capital. And at the moment they rely on voluntary codes of conduct. And if you want to read it, you can just go online and you'll probably find it. It's called, as you can read here, it's called The Legacy of Greenstone Resources in Nicaragua. Okay, let's move on to the next case. And this is also another example with very different circumstances, as I'll show in a minute. And it's the oldest gold mountain that has been exploited for 500 years, and you have a picture of that mountain here on that slide. And it's the town of Marmato has been basically a poor town of about 2,000 residents. They have depended on its gold for generations, and as you can see on those photographs on the upper left, they have they build those underground tunnels. They use dynamite to blast the rock, and they loaded those rocks on wagons, and there is this man that seems to be pulling that wagon out of the tunnel, and basically they loaded these the rocks on these railing systems, and they took them to these mills, and basically they ground all those rocks to as fine powder as they can get, and they mix it with water to make a slurry, and then they pour elemental mercury and shake it up, and basically the mercury binds to the gold. It forms like a little pearl. It's also called an amalgam, and basically that little pearl they put on a stove and or a pan, and they heat it up with a blowtorch, and the mercury evaporates and the gold stays behind. And so that's been done that way for generations, and as you can imagine, it's a not very clean technology for extracting gold out of the rock. But anyway, we could call these, if you like, a subsistence economy. They are poor people, and they basically live on what they have been making on a day-to-day basis. And lo and behold, here comes a big brother, and this time is called Canadian Goldfields, now Medoro Resources. And they when they first arrived, they did their exploration, and they estimated that the gold reserves in the mountain are worth $14 billion, and that could be tapped in about 20 years. And that's according to the president of the company, Tom Law, and you can probably watch that on a CBC documentary that was released in 2008. And as you can imagine, the company had to proceed with caution here, because you have 2,000 people living off that mountain. And what they did is they started buying all the mills, the tunnels, the mining rights that people had for exploiting the mountain. And they did that slowly since 2007 until 2010. And that they were obviously hiring the people and probably giving them a better paycheck at the end of the month. And in the year 2010, they decided it was probably the right time to just declare that it was not profitable to keep the operations open, and they had to close down everything and convert it into an open pit mine. So in this case, unlike the other one, there is one big obstacle standing in the way of progress, and as you can imagine, that obstacle is the town of Marmato with all its inhabitants. And this is an aerial view on this slide of the town. As you can see, they have created a lot of landslides from blasting the mountain underneath, and obviously the plans to shut down all the tunnels and mills didn't go very well with the people, and they started protesting against converting their mountain into an open pit mine. And these are, as you can see, the people parading on the roads near Marmato against the company. And here at this point the government had to intervene and do something about it. So what they did is they sent their crew of experts from the Colombian Institute of Geology and Mining, and as you can see, these are some of the pictures on that report that they put together. They took some photograph of landslides in the village, muddy roads, cracks on the walls of many of the houses, and they concluded on that report that the town of Marmato is declared an ecologically unstable area for its inhabitants, and the only solution is relocation. Now, so the government, together with the company, started building these shacks, or in the nearby town of Los Llanos, and basically they're giving it away to whoever miner wants to move out of Marmato, because the only thing that pretty much the company doesn't own at this point is just the town of Marmato. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of people living there that don't want to move out. It's their homeland. They grew up there. It's the place where their parents, grandparents have lived all their lives, and they're not willing to pack and leave. And unfortunately, they don't really have much of a choice. And the question that we should probably ask the government and the companies: have you planned any future for the people of Marmato apart from the relocation? Because at the time being, there are about 2 million Colombians that have been displaced from their native land. And the second question that I would ask is down here: will you respect those people unwilling to leave their homes? And just to illustrate an example, the priest of Marmato was leading the opposition to leave the town of Marmato. He kind of took side with the miners and say he's staying. And as you can see on this slide, he was murdered by gunshots on September of last year. And here is a picture of him, 36-year-old. And what is an irony is that they're offering an $11,000 reward for whoever is providing some information on his death. Okay, at this point on the presentation, I would like to ask, what is all that gold being used for that is so valuable? And I couldn't find a very exact figure, and I was looking around and different sources, and one of them was saying that about 70% is used as jewelry. So I wanted to bring up an example of that. So I chose this display of pure gold Disney character dolls that are, as you can see, showing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they're priced at 30 million yen, which is equivalent to $300,000, and was produced somewhere in Japan. Now, what would be interesting to know, in order to produce those items, I would like to know how much forest was destroyed, how much dynamite was used, how much water was used from the aquifers, how much mercury and or cyanide, in the case of industrial exploration, was used and released into the environment, and how much wildlife creatures lost their habitat and or died. And also the impact to the local inhabitants. How about the agriculture, the fishing, and ultimately our future as a species. And as closing words, I would like to end by answering the question that I was asking earlier. Why are countries with abundant resources poor? And we could probably ask that question in a different way. How much of that revenue that comes from industrial mining is sustained in the countries? And when I talk about the revenue, I talk how much is it being invested in social, like building the infrastructure of the country, the schools, the hospitals, the roads, sewage treatment plants. If we talk about Colombia, we don't have any sewage treatment plants in any major cities. So you can imagine all the raw sewage is draining into the waterways. The roads, many of them are not paved in Colombia, and even if they are, they're pretty dreadful to drive around. And hospitals, not many people can afford decent medical care. They're not very well equipped, and if they are, it's only in the big cities. And another point is how much of that revenue is used to boost the economy, and how many jobs are created. And when we talk about Colombia, there are about 45 million people, and of those 90% are very poor, and only 10% are very wealthy. And finally, the environment. Can we afford the destruction of the wildlife habitats and forests in light of the planet's climate change? And I might be able to somewhat speculate on the social and economic points, but when it comes to the environment, I think we're really taking a huge risk by not knowing what is happening when we destroy our forest. And if I want to leave you with any take-home message, I would like you to ask yourself: can we survive as a species without our forests? Because at the rate of deforestation that we're facing in Colombia, for example, it's very worrisome what the future might look like. And having said that, I think I wanna close by thank you all. If you're still there and have put up with my presentation all the way up to this point, I want to thank you, and I want to wish you good luck on if you're working on something related to the protection of our environment. I think we all share a wonderful planet, and it's our duty as citizens of the world to make sure that we can keep it as well as Mother Nature has done for hundreds of years, and so we can leave our future generations with a planet in good condition for them to enjoy as much as we do, and as much as I do when I go out and see a pristine environment. So having said that, I want to thank you again, and I look forward to meeting you if I come across you sometime. So thank you very much, and God bless you all. Bye bye.